Hello everyone and welcome to Project Insight's Product Training webinar. The topic for today is creating and running portfolio and project reports. Just a few things to note before we get started. All participants will be put on mute. However, any questions you have are more than welcome. Please go ahead and type those into your question box, which you can find on your GoToWebinar dashboard. We will try to answer all of your questions during the session, but if we can't, we'll make sure to get to you through email before the end of the day, or you can also feel free to email us your questions at info@projectinsight.net. Also, do know this webinar recording will be available within our Project Insight community. My name is Denise, and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm on the marketing team here at Project Insight. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to reach me at denise.rodriguez@projectinsight.com. Our presenter and trainer for today will be Angie Smith. She is our partner out in Canada, and she is also PNP certified. Some of the benefits of today's webinar is to know the usefulness of each report section and to understand how to create, save, and share your own customized reports. On our agenda today, we'll run a default report, use display options to create reports, utilize the dynamic dates, use shortcuts on the pull-down menus, select new columns or remove columns, group by and subtotal your portfolio. We'll also learn how to save your own custom reports, share your saved reports with others, interpret health indicators, create graphical reports, and leverage the dashboard to display the information that you care about. So with a full agenda, I'm happy to hand this over on to Angie to continue with the rest of today's webinar. Welcome, Angie.
Thank you, Denise. Okay, so everybody should be seeing my Project Insight dashboard now. One of the benefits of Project Insight is that you can run real-time portfolio and project reports whenever you need them. And without an enterprise project and portfolio management solution, you may find that you're waiting weeks or even months to get portfolio-level reports. You may find that it's also taking your team hours, days, or weeks to analyze and assemble the data from several different sources to get a portfolio report. This is time that can be spent in more beneficial areas, such as addressing issues or conferring with clients. Now, with the Project Insight project and portfolio reports, you can instantly access the data you need to make decisions. There is no need to wait for your IT department or consultants to create the report. And the report is available to you instantly with up-to-date data because your team is interacting with the system in real time. Now, the first topic covered in today's session is how to run a default report. So you can run a report by clicking the Reports icon with one click from anywhere you are in the system. Now, when you do that, the Reports form is displayed. And this Reports form contains a number of different sections that correspond to the different types of reports that you are able to run. Now, Project Insight will remember whatever section you were on last and return to that section when you navigate to the reports. So in this case, it's remembering that the last type of report that you ran was a project report, so it's taking it to that section. Now, project reports are also one of the most common types of reports that you are going to run. So if you want to run a project report, then go ahead and click on that section if it's not already selected. And in here, you have a couple of different kinds of reports, and I'm just going to collapse this general section to keep our options clean. So the first section here is where you can create a project report, and that lets you view your entire portfolio of projects at a summary or project level. From here, you can also run project request reports and also change order reports. Now, other reports, such as a task report, which is actually a different section on the left navigation of the reports, these let you view your project in more detail. So you can go ahead and click on those task reports and then see the options in there as well. But we do cover task reports in a separate training session called Creating and Running Task and Milestone Reports. So you can go ahead and attend that session if you need some more help to get more detailed reports. So for now, you're going to run the project or portfolio level report. So we're going to click on the project section again. Now let's go ahead and click on Create Project Report to create a report from scratch. And each report type has been set up with some default options to make it easier for you to run. And you can create a report using the default options, or you can change the options for the report with the information on this display and filter options layer. For example, if you just ran the report now by clicking on the Run Report icon without changing any of those display options, this will give you a default project report, which is a list of all the active projects you have in the system. And you can see that here, that it's telling you that it's all projects marked active. And when you're running any of the reports, what you can do is you can click and drag in the column headers to make each column wider or smaller as you require. So don't click on the line in between the column headers, click in the middle of the column header itself and drag wider or smaller. And that's a little bit different from those of you that are familiar with Microsoft Excel, where you click on the line in between to make them wider or smaller. In this case, you actually click on the header to make it wider or smaller. Now, from here, you can also view the reports graphically in a cross-project Gantt chart. So go ahead and click on that option. And what that'll do is show you a list of your active projects in a timeline view. Now, this is a popular view for executives and project managers. You can see on a timeline when the project is scheduled to start and also how long it's set to run for. So this one you can see it starts on October 13th and runs to October 26th. And you can also see how far along this project is, which is indicated by the black bar. And that indicates the progress of the project in terms of the percentage complete. So that's a really nice visual indicator. And again, executive levels like this kind of report. Now, if you click the Project Insight Back icon, which is this blue arrow here in the upper left-hand corner, or actually the white arrow, it will take you back to the display options for the project report. So you can use the display and filter options to change the default information that's displayed. Now, anyone that has access to Project Insight has the ability to change the display options on a report. You don't need to be a system administrator or an IT person to do this. You can change the display options to adapt the report to show the information that you need. Of course, you are always only able to run the reports and see the data that you have permissions to see. So for example, not everybody can run a project report at this level. You do need to have a system role set to enable you to do that. On the project reports as well, many of the other So on this project report, as well as a lot of the other report types that are available, the first option that you're going to have is always to select by a date range. Now, the default for the project reports is all dates, which means all projects will be listed regardless of any date information associated with the project. Now, for the project report, this date range option applies to the start and end date of tasks within the project. It does not apply to the actual project scheduled start date or created date. And the project report selects projects to include based on the start and end dates of the tasks within the project if you start applying date filtering instead of all dates. So to apply some date filtering, go ahead and click in the date range type drop-down, and you can see a couple of other options in here. You can see dynamic dates and specific dates. So we're going to select dynamic dates to work with. Now, dynamic dates means that you are selecting a predetermined or pre-configured date range. So click on the dynamic date range drop-down, and you can see a list of all the dynamic date options. Now, the beauty of using dynamic dates is that if you save this report and run it later on, the date ranges for the report will change automatically based on this dynamic date range that you've selected. For example, right now it's set to current month. So if you save this report and run it today, or in fact run it any time this month, it will select all projects that have at least one task in the range of October 1st to October 31st because the current month is October. However, if you ran the same saved report in November without changing anything, it will select all projects that have at least one task in the range of November 1st to November 30th because November would then be the current month. So with the dynamic dates option, Project Insight will change the dates automatically without you having to change them each time. And that reduces the time it takes you to create and run reports. You can create the report you want with dynamic dates, save it, and then easily run it when you need to without having to change that information each time. So you can see you can select some different dynamic date options such as like current quarter, current year, last week, semi-month, month or quarter or year, or the next one as well, so looking forward out into the future. Now you can also select specific dates instead of dynamic dates. So let's click on the white space on the form to exit out of the dynamic date range dropdown, and let's click back in our date range type and now change it to specific dates. So instead of entering a dynamic date range that automatically shifts depending on what the current date is, you can enter a specific start and end date. So enter a start date by clicking on the calendar icon. You can also just type it in, but click on the calendar icon. That's an easy way to do it. And let's select October 1st. And then enter in an end date by, again, clicking on the calendar icon and selecting October 31st. Now, if you went and ran this report and then saved it and ran it anytime again in November, it would be the same as running it with the current month dynamic date option because you're running it for the October or current month time frame. However, if you did go and run the saved report when it was actually November or any other month or the year, the report is still going to run for the specific dates you set, which were still October 1st and October 31st. So that's the difference between the dynamic dates and the specific dates. Dynamic dates change automatically, whereas specific dates are hard-coded in and don't change. So that's important to understand primarily when you save reports. If you're just running this report one-off, it doesn't matter if you put in a specific date or you put in a dynamic date because it's just like a one-off report. But if you save this report because you are going to rerun it at a different date in time, you want to ensure that when the report is run in the future, it does display the correct information. So if you are putting in specific dates and you run this report in the future, you might want to change those dates at the time you run the report. Or you can use the dynamic dates and then they'll shift automatically. Now the other type of option that's specific to dates is this thing called filter type. So if you click in the drop-down list for the filter type, you can see that there's a couple of different options available. Now occurs in, that's the default, and it means that if there is any task on the project that has a start date or an end date that occurs within your date range, whether that's a specific date range or a dynamic date range, then the project is going to be selected to print on the report. So it's important to understand that the occurs in means that if the task either starts or ends within the date range applicable, then the project is going to be selected. It only needs to be one or the other. It doesn't need to be both. However, start in means that if any task on the project has a start date that occurs within the date range entered, the project will be selected to print on the report. End in means that if any task on the project has an end date that occurs within the date range entered, then the project will be selected. And then the last option, contained within, means that if any task on the project has both the start and end date occurring within the date range, then the project will be selected. In other words, if the project has a task that both starts and ends within the date range, then select the project. So the most common type of option is occurs in, which means that the project will print if any of its tasks start or end within the date range. So for now, we're just going to actually go ahead and set this back to all dates, and that means it won't filter by dates. It's just going to give us all projects, but it will check the other criteria we set to see which of those projects will appear. Now the other display and filter options are grouped together under different sections. And this is the same way how it works on all the reports, not just the project report. To expand out a section and see the options available, you can just go ahead and click on the blue header bar. And then to collapse a section, just click on it again. So even if a section is collapsed, it does remember what you set in that section and runs the report according to that filter. So even if you collapse a section, it doesn't mean that it erases that information or doesn't apply it. It still applies it and remembers it. So just keep that in mind. If you're sometimes seeing some information and you're not knowing why you're seeing it, then you just go ahead and expand out those different sections and have a look at what might be said in there. So you can see that there are a lot of different filtering options that are available, and there's also some charting and grouping options. So we don't cover all of those in full detail in this session. We cover quite a bit, but if you do need some more help, you can always click our help icon or press F1, and that'll bring up help that's specific to this page. And so you can see, we've got our project dashboard report, and then you can go ahead and click on the different sections to expand it out and get some more details. So if you forgot how those date range option works, you can come in here and read all of that information. And then just go ahead and hide the help or click the X to close the help. Now for the project reports, there is one option that is always set by default. So if you just ran this with all the defaults, you wouldn't get all the projects you have in the system. You are going to have one preset filtering option set, and to see that, click on the project status and condition filtering options section to expand that out. And you'll see here under state that it's checked to include projects marked active. So if you run this report without changing any of the display options, it's only going to list active projects. However, you can include other projects such as planning projects by clicking on that, or you could even do things like, say, just show me all the projects that are archived or closed, or even you could do a list of just your templates that you have set up or projects that are marked to be deleted. So you can see there's lots of different options that you can choose, but active projects is the default, and that's what's going to show on this report. Now let's go ahead and click on the project status and condition filtering options section to collapse that again. And it's always nice to keep your screen condensed so you can concentrate on the information that you're working on. And we're going to have a look at this column selection options. And again, this is a common section that's applicable to every report. And if you click on that to expand it out, and we can click on the blue header bar of the display options and drag it around, so you can reposition it on your screen if you need to. So now we can see this column selection options. And there's a few sections in here, but basically this selected columns tells you what columns of data are going to print on your report. And these are the default ones that are displayed right now. But you can change any of these by selecting from the available columns. So this is all the available data that's available to print for projects. And you can also remove the information that's already in the selected columns. Now, if you start to scroll down through the available columns, you can see that there is a lot of data that's available. So if you don't quite understand what some of the columns might be or the kind of data that they contain, then what you can always do is you can click on a column. So I'm going to click on the actual expense, and then I'm going to click on this option down here called Show Tooltip for selected columns. And that'll give you some help about what that column is. So you can see what is the actual expense column. Well, it's the sum of all the actual expenses for the associated expense entries entered by the assigned resources. So go ahead and click OK, and that'll remove that option. All right, so that's the tooltip. Now, to move a column from your available columns over to your selected columns, you can just double-click on a field. For example, if you wanted to see the total actual hours that have been recorded for this project, just go ahead and double-click on the actual hours. And you can see that moved that over to our selected columns, and it put it at the very end of our current list of columns that are going to print on the report. Now, the other way you can move from your available columns over to your selected columns, so let's put in maybe our actual total, is you just click on it to highlight it and then click the right arrow, and that moves it over as well. So double-clicking on a column or single-clicking on a column and then clicking the arrow accomplish the same thing, which is basically moving the column from the available to the selected. Now, if you wanted to move multiple columns, you can do that as well. So hold down the Control button on your keyboard and click on the columns that you want. So let's click on actual expense and actual time, so they're both highlighted, and then click on the right arrow to move those over. And then again, that puts over both those fields and puts them at the end. If you wanted to remove columns, all you have to do is the same technique. You can double-click on it to remove it from the selected columns, and that puts it back over in the available columns. Or you can click on it and then click the left arrow to remove it as well. Or if you wanted to remove multiple, then again you can click and hold down your Control and then click the right arrow and remove multiple columns as well. And once you move a column back, it'll start appearing back in the available columns. Now let's scroll down. Because when we added in new fields from here, you can see that it actually put it at the end of the selected columns. But you can actually tell it where to put your new columns of data before you move it over. So for example, if we wanted to insert some new fields just before work hours, what you do is click on the column in selected columns where you want the new fields to appear just before. So it's going to insert your new columns before the highlighted field. Then let's go down to profit, and let's put in a profit column. So now if we double click on that to move it over, you'll see it automatically positioned it right before the work hours or the highlighted one. So that's another quick way that you can insert columns and put them right in the position where you want them to display. But if you did want to move stuff around after it got in the selected columns, you can just click on it, and you can actually hold down the Control key and click on multiple ones as well, and then just use your up and down arrow keys to reposition them as well. All right, so let's, I'm just going to have a look here. So let's, we want our actual hours, and let's put back in our actual time. So I'm going to click on actual total because I want it inserted just before that, and I'm going to put in actual time, and then I'm going to put in actual expenses, and then I've got my actual total, and then I also have my profit plan, and then I've got my work hours. So I'm going to click on my work hours, and I'm going to reposition those. I'm going to move those up a little bit to just after % complete. All right, so now that I've added in the new columns of data that I want to appear and I've put them in the order that I want them to show, then I can click on the Run Report icon. And that's going to run my report now and show those new data elements. And again, what I can do is I can hover in the header bar and click and hold and then drag them bigger so I can see the full headers or labels if I wanted to. Now on this project report, each line represents the total for that project. So we can see we have actual hours for database development project, actual time, any actual expenses that were entered, our actual totals, and then our planned profit values as well. And all of those metrics will actually add up to give you a total for your entire portfolio. So in addition to having totals by each individual project on the report, plus just at the portfolio level, you can add some other grouping and subtotaling options, such as maybe by customer if you're doing customer-facing projects, or by project type if you have different types of projects going on and you want to start totaling so you can see data by each different type. Let's just drag that. You can see there's a couple different types we have set in here. So to add in some additional grouping and subtotaling options, click back on your display options icon, and we'll collapse our column selection options because we don't need that right now. And then we're going to click on the group by and subtotal options to expand that out. Now in the type drop-down, if we click in there, you'll see there's a couple of different options. And this controls how your information is grouped and displayed on your report. So we're going to leave it as the default right now, which is group by. And you'll see how the information looks using that option. Now, click on the white space to exit out of that drop-down. And in the column selection, you're going to want to select, what are we going to group by? So we'll click in the drop-down for that, and we're going to say company default, because we want to see it grouped by company, and maybe we want to see, our planned profit by company level. And it's important to note that once you select a grouping or subtotaling option, you always have to click on this blue plus sign. Until you do that, it won't actually take effect. So you want to click on that so you can see that the grouping is listed below. So that means that grouping has now been added. Now you could also do some things like you can set the default sort direction of this. And you can say whether it's ascending or descending. All right, so now that you've done that, added that grouping, let's click Run Report again. And now you'll see that it has run the project report, but it's actually displaying all that data in a collapse mode. So you're not seeing all the projects listed. You're seeing it listed by that grouping that we put in. So you can see it grouped by company, and it's showing you all the companies that have active projects. And so we see customer ABC has 1 project and customer DEF has 2 projects. So it's actually giving you the total number of projects for each company as well. And we've got one that's uncategorized, which means we haven't actually assigned it to a company, but we've also got one assigned to our company as well, which means it's most likely an internal project that we're doing. So we'll probably want to go and have a look at this uncategorized one, and maybe we forgot to enter in the company or something, so we might want to go and set that company. So you can see now at a company level, how many work hours, what the % complete of all the projects is rolled up, the actual hours, the actual time, actual total, and again, our profit that's planned for each project. So doing that subtotaling by customer lets you see the financials associated with the customer. And if you want to see the details, then go ahead and click on this arrow next to the customer name. And then that expands it out and shows you a list of all the individual projects for the customer, and again, the totals for those projects. So that report makes sense if you are doing projects for external customers. Maybe if you're doing internal projects, you wouldn't group it by customer because it doesn't make sense. But you might group it by something like a department if you were assigning departments to each project. Or another common way to group as well is by project type. Now, before we have a look at that, one thing that is recommended is if that you're using a column for a grouping, such as this case the customer, that you don't want to show that column in the details line as well because you're replicating that information. So for example, if we decide to add another grouping, which is by the type of project, which is this column right here, if we've decided we're going to group by that column, then we don't want that column showing up here in the detail line as well. So we'll want to remove it from our display. So let's click on that arrow to collapse that section again. And that's one way to group. Now if we go back to the display options, we're going to see a different way when we're going to group by type. So we're going to remove our current grouping, which is by company, and we do that by clicking on the remove icon, which is this piece of paper with the orange arrow. So that removes that grouping. Now in the type drop-down, we're going to click on that, and this time we're going to do subtotal. So remember the group by option is this one here. It showed everything in a collapsed mode with the ability to expand that out and see the details below it. This time we're going to switch it to subtotal, and then we're going to change our grouping. We're going to change it to project type. So let's find our type. So we're going to click on type. And remember, you have to click that blue plus sign icon to add it. And what this grouping type will do is show you the information in a reverse manner with the group totals at the bottom and all of the detail displayed automatically. So let's go ahead and and one more thing that we're going to do here is, remember we said that if we were going to group by a certain column, we didn't want that also displayed in our details. So let's go to our column selection options, and we're going to double click on the type column to remove that because it becomes redundant. If you're grouping by it, you don't want to display it. Now we're going to go ahead and run that report. Now you'll see it's changed. So it's giving you a detail line for each type, and then it's giving you a summary below that. So instead of organizing it and grouping it and showing it all collapsed, it's actually showing you all expanded and showing you the summary information below. And you can see the summary information line is always in the yellow highlighting, so you know that's the summary. Now in this case, we only have one project per type, so it's only showing one detail line per yellow summary line, but normally you're probably going to have a few detailed lines in here that adds up to the summary. So that's the other way that you can display information, is using that subtotaling function. Now you can actually do both of those on one report. So you could click on the remove. Let's remove that grouping. Let's change it back to both. Let's change it back to company and click the blue plus sign to add that, and now run that report. Okay, so now it's showing you like you first saw it. It's showing you in a collapse mode, one line per the grouping by data. But if you click on the arrow, it actually shows also the details and then the subtotaling line by that. And let's collapse the customer ABC and let's have a look at it for customer DF because there's two projects. So it's when you collapse that section out, it's showing you the details and then giving you another subtotal line at the bottom. So you can actually do both those grouping and subtotaling options together. So you can experiment with that a little bit and see how it looks. But the other thing that you can also do is you can do multiple group bys. So you can group by more than one criteria. So let's go back to the display options icon to do that. And again, let's remove the current grouping. And when you're doing multiple groupings, the first group you add will be the main grouping criteria. And then the second group you add will be a subgroup within the first one, and so on. So you do need to know the order that you want to group in and add those main groups first. So in the type, let's change this back to group by. And then we're going to leave the company default because that's we want to group by that as our first main grouping. And again, remember, click the blue plus sign. And I'm going to click on our column selection options to expand that. So we're just focusing on this section right now. Then if we want to first group by company, but maybe our second level of grouping is going to be by project type. So we'll leave our group by set, but now we're going to choose type. And again, click our blue plus sign to add that. And now let's go ahead and run that report. So you'll see at first it looks the same. So you've got it grouped by customer. But if we click on the arrow to expand out a section, you'll see that it's now secondarily grouped by the type. So we have for customer DEF, we have a marketing type project and a professional services type project. Then again, we click on the arrow next to that and it expands it out and shows you the detail within those types. So that's doing multiple group bys as well. And again, just click on the arrow again to collapse it if you need to, or you can also go over here to your tools icon and you can actually expand all or collapse all as well. So that's another way that you can do things. Now, if this was a report that you used often and you ran it often and you wanted to see, these additional columns of data that we put on it along with a planned profit, then what you can do is you can save the report so you can quickly run it at any time. And this is going to save you time and also ensure consistency of reporting so that if you run this once a month, you're getting the exact same data every time and you don't risk making a mistake by adding the wrong data field or something like that. So to save a report, you want to click the Save Report icon at the bottom of the report. Now the first thing you always need to do when saving a report is enter in the name of the report. And you want to make this as descriptive as possible so you're going to know what this report is when you run it. And we're going to type in, so we're going to have a list of all of our active projects by customer and type. So that's pretty descriptive. So you'll know pretty well what you're running when you run this report. In addition, though, you can also enter in more information about what this report does. And to do that, you can click on the Description tab. So we could do some things like maybe say this is a list of active projects grouped by customer and then by type. So you could enter in some more detailed information to let people know what kind of data is going to display on this report when you run it. Now we can just save this for now, but actually let's click back on our General tab because we want to have a look at this option down here. And this is called Include in Report Menu. And you can see that it is checked by default. So for saved reports that you access frequently, you will want to include them on your reports shortcut. And that way you can access them with one click from anywhere in Project Insight. So that's checked by default, and we're going to leave that checked and go ahead and click Save. Then you will receive a confirmation message that your report has been saved, and you can go ahead and click OK. So now, if you hover on the Reports menu option, so don't click on it. The first time we went in here, we actually clicked on the reports to get to the reports form. This time, we're actually just going to hover on it, and you'll see we've got some additional sub-reports displaying, and we can hover on those, and that'll show us all of our saved reports that we checked to show in our menu option. So you can see the report that we just saved, which is our active projects by customer and type. So it got created as a submenu in here, and what that enables you to do is easily access this report from one click from anywhere in the system. And you don't have to drill down into multiple submenus and wait for the screen to refresh or anything like that. You just, hover on the reports, go to Project Reports, and click on it to run it. Now you can see that if I do that again and just hover, there's like a number of different saved reports that I've got. So if you decided that, you wanted to save a report, but you don't want to run it that often, so you don't want it cluttering up this shortcuts menu, then you can remove it from this menu by clicking on the Save Report icon again. And this time you just uncheck Include in Report menu and then click Save. And again, you get a confirmation and click OK. And then it's going to be removed from this shortcut list. And sometimes it does take a few minutes in the background to have that happen. So you might not see this change instantaneously, but within a few minutes you'll see that it'll actually be removed from this menu option. But the report itself is still saved. And to see that, you can go ahead and click on the Reports menu option, go back to our project reports, and click in the My Saved Reports. So then you'll see that the active projects by customer and type report that we saved is still there. And you can actually see the description as well. So you can see the description that was entered. So if you need a little bit more information about that report and what it does, it's displayed there. But it should, and let's see if it's removed yet. Now you can see that it is now gone though from our reports shortcuts. So you can still have it saved and choose whether or not to have it in that shortcuts list of menu. Now the other thing that you may decide that this report is useful not only to yourself, but to other members of your team or some of your management or executives. So you don't want them to have to go and recreate this report themselves. You can actually take the report that you created and easily share it with them. So to do that, let's go ahead and click on this report to run it again. And then click the Save Report option again. And this time we're going to click on the Share tab. And you can see within here that you can share this report with groups of users, users associated with different companies, or sorry, that's the wrong way around. Here's your groups of users, reports associated with, or sorry, users associated with different companies, or this one here is individual users. So if we decided to share this with individual users, we could click in the drop down for that. And I'm going to click on our little triple arrows down there at the bottom and drag this a little bit bigger. And I can see I've got some options turned on. So I'm seeing the user plus also the email. I'll just drag that a little bit smaller again. So I could click on the users that I wanted to share this report with. And I could choose multiple users if I wanted to. The other thing I might want to do is create a group. So maybe I have a set of managers that I want to share this report with. So I could create a management group and then just share it with a certain group. You know, in this case, I've got like project managers. I could maybe share it with all the other project managers. So then once you've decided who you want to share it with, you select them. Then go ahead and click Save. And again, we've got this option here that says Include in the Shared Report menu. So it'll come up in their shortcut list if this is checked. Again, click OK to the confirmation. So this user will now have that report listed on their projects report and they can run it. Now remember though that even if you share a report with other users, they're only going to be able to see the data that they have access to see. So if I went and shared this report with some of my team members who may not have the ability to see actual hours and profit, then they're not going to see that data, even though I shared the report with them. Now, if a report was created by another user and shared with you, you're also going to see it on your Reports menu drop-down or shortcuts. So again, if we hover on our Projects report, and actually these last two reports here were reports created by other users and shared with you. So how this works is basically any reports that you created and you saved and said to put in your shortcuts, they're going to be listed first in alphabetical order. Then any other reports that any other users have created and shared with you will be listed after that in their own section in alphabetical order as well. And you can just click on one of those saved reports and that's going to run that report. Now, if we go back to our reports menu option and go to our projects section, remember we've got this section here that is all of your saved reports. So all the reports that you've created yourself. But if I click on that section to collapse it, I can also click on the shared section to expand that out. And in here, I can also see any reports that were created by other users and shared with me. Now, if I go back to my saved reports and I hover on one of the reports that I've created and saved, you'll see I've got a set of options that come up here. So I've got an edit option, so I can go in and make changes to this report. And I also have a delete icon. And these options are available because it's a report that you created and saved. So you could click on the delete icon next to the report and delete that report, that saved report completely. I mean, you can always recreate it again, but you click on the X to remove the report. Now, if you did want to make changes to a report, you can click the edit or just click on it to run it. And then go ahead and click on those display options and make any changes in here that you require. And then run the report again. And then save the report. Now, by default, when you run a report that you've created and then save it again, if you made any changes to it with the display filter options, it's going to assume that when you save it, you're going to overwrite the existing report and save the report with the same, or save those changes but with the same report. Now, if you don't want to do that, you actually want to create a separate report, so you want to leave the current report with the way it works, you can click on a Save as New Report. And this will leave your existing report as it is and create a brand new report. Now, it's important that if you're going to do this, you also want to change the name to avoid confusion. Otherwise, it will let you save reports with the same name. So you would want to change this. Like maybe, if you remove the grouping by type, so we'd change the name of it to also reflect that. So anytime that you have an existing report and you run it and make changes and save it, you can save it as a brand new report and not overwrite the existing one by clicking on this option and changing your name. Let's click cancel for now because I don't want to make any changes to that. Now, if we go back to the reports menu option, and let's click on the My Save section to collapse that, and let's have a look at reports that have been shared with you by other users. You can see John Sysadmin has shared a couple of reports with you. But if you hover on those reports, there is no edit and delete icons available. And that's because you aren't able to modify or delete a report that was shared by another resource. So it's very safe to share your reports with other resources. They're not going to be able to change your report. If they did want to make changes to that report, then they'd have to run it and save it as a new report. And then they could make whatever changes they wanted to because it now becomes their own report. But they're not able to change any reports that you created and shared out. So if we wanted to run this incomplete projects report that John Sysadmin created, but then we wanted to make some changes to it. So for example, we wanted to have some different columns. Maybe we didn't want % complete, so remove that and run that report. So now it's been changed, but if we click Save Report, you'll see that this option to save as a new report is not available to be changed now. And that's because you were running a report created by John Sysadmin and shared with you. You can't change his original report. You have to always save it as a new report. So again, you want to change the name to avoid any confusion with the report that he shared with you. And we changed it. We moved the % complete, so let's call it that. And now we can go ahead and save that, and we'll have a different report. So if we go to project reports, and again, it might take a couple of minutes for it to show up in your shortcuts list, but it'll then show up in your shortcuts list as well. So you'd have an incomplete projects an incomplete projects with the % complete removed in your list of reports, and there it is right there. And then you also have incomplete projects down here, which is the shared report from John Sysadmin. All right, now we want to look at how we can take, all of these reports that you're creating and saving and put it on your dashboard so that it's easily viewable and easily accessible. So click on the My Insight icon to navigate to your dashboard. And we do already have a planned profit chart on our dashboard. So this is actually another portfolio level report that we can see that's showing us all the planned profits. So someone's created that and put that in the dashboard already. But let's go ahead and collapse our projects and our tasks sections on our dashboard. And then go to our dashboard display options and go to the reports section. And we're going to click on the report 1 icon to put a new report component on our dashboard. And if we do that again, you'll see that we can actually put up to 4 different reports on our dashboard. So somebody's already using one of these report components for this chart here. And it's important to note that you do have to save a report before you are able to put it on your dashboard. So let's go ahead and click on Select a Report in our report component. And now you have to tell the system what report it is that you want to put on your dashboard. So let's click on the drop-down. And let's find our report. So we want our active projects by customer and type report. And we'll click Save. And now that report is showing on the dashboard. And if you want to shorten like the height of the report showing on the dashboard, you can click on this display options icon here and enter in the report height. So the default is around 600 pixels, but you can override that and put in a height that you require. So you might want to make this a little bit smaller because there's not a lot of projects listed, but you can go ahead and do that as you need to. Now, one other option we do select, you can see that this report, there isn't quite enough information for all the data to be displayed. So you might want to change your dashboard layout to be like a full width layout as well. And that'll also give you some more room and display some more of your reporting information so it's not getting cut off. Now, with Project Insight, you can create bar charts, pies, donuts, line graphs, and other area charts. So, for example, we've got a planned profit chart showing, and you can place them on the dashboard. So to do that, you need to first create your chart or graph. So we're going to go back to the reports icon and create a new project report. And this time we're going to go to this charting display options section. And we'll drag this up, move it around so we've got a little bit more information. And you are able to put up to 4 different charts or graphs on one individual report. So for now, we're just going to put 1 on so you can see how that works. So in this drop down here, we're going to click on it, and you can see that there are some predefined charts that you can choose from, but you can also create your own custom chart. So we're going to go to the custom chart because we want to see how that works. Now you can see if you click, once you do that, you've got some additional data elements showing, and we have a chart type here. So let's click on the drop down for that, and you can see all those different charts that are available. So we're going to choose bar in this case. Then we want to aggregate by. So how do you want to aggregate the data on your bar chart? And you can do this by different fields. And if you click in the drop down, you can see all the different fields that you can aggregate by. And a common one might be by different companies. Now, if you decided to just leave this aggregate by, it will aggregate it by project because we are running a project report. But in our case, let's choose the company because we want to aggregate it by the company. Then you want to choose the columns that you want to print on the chart. So click in this chart columns to do that. And for example, maybe on this one we want 3 columns of data. So we want something called the target billable total right here. So we're going to click on that. And that's what you thought you were going to bill the client at the start of this project. And all this is covered in some other training sessions, these data elements. But let's click on the blue plus sign to add that. Then we're going to do the, let's see, what's the next one we want here? Target billable total. We also want the actuals. So let's go find the actual totals. We'll scroll back up to actuals. Click on the plus sign to add that. And then we finally want the profit actual. So we'll scroll down, and we can also start typing in the name of the column we're looking for. So we can actually start typing in profit, and that'll narrow the list as well. And we'll do profit actual and click on the plus sign for that. Now let's go ahead and run that report. So now you'll see it's showing us a bar chart, and it's showing us aggregated by our company, and it's showing us, first of all, our target billable total. So we've basically, right now, it's showing us the uncategorized. So I might have to just kind of double check if that was bar chart company contract. Oh, see, I've got the wrong field in there. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit different data than I thought. So I've got the wrong, I had it aggregated by the wrong data element. Okay, that looks a little bit more correct. So now it's showing us that we've got customer ABC, customer DEF, my company, and uncategorized. So it's aggregating it by the company because that's what we said. And then it's showing us our data elements on our bar charts. So the orange is our target billable total, then our yellow is our actuals, and then our green is our profit actuals. So you can see those very nicely, very visually on that chart. Now we could put this as well on our dashboard. So to do that, we need to save the report, because we always have to save the report before we can put it on our dashboard. And we're going to call it profit bar chart by company, because we want to make it very descriptive, and save it. And then click OK. Then go back to our dashboard by clicking on My Insight. And click on our dashboard options. And we're going to select, this time we're going to put a Report To component on here. And I'm just going to collapse these other ones so I can see this new component. I'm going to select our report. And let's see here, I have to remember what I called it. Profit bar chart by company. So let's go find that. And save that. And now that bar chart is showing on your dashboard. All right. Now I know we've got just a couple of minutes left here before we get to the end of our session. So one of the last things I want to talk about, which is a very common, has to do with the very common functions that you're doing as project managers, is looking at and interpreting health indicators for projects. So we talked about the fact that you can create your own custom reports and charts, but Project Insight also has a lot of predefined charts and reports as well that you can run. So if we go back to our reports menu option, and let's collapse these shared ones here. So instead of looking at My Saved and Shared, let's have a look at our predefined reports. And if we click on our chart reports to expand that out, you can see some predefined charting reports that are available. And you can go ahead and just click on those to run any of those and see them. And if we click on that section to expand it out, and then to collapse it, and we click on the general project section to expand that out, you can also see there's some different predefined reports as well. And one of them that's very common is this project dashboard. So we're going to click on that to run that. And it comes up with our project dashboard report. And if I click on this indicators column and drag it a little bit wider, I start to see my automatic health indicators. So these indicators let you know if your project is running behind schedule, or you're spending too much time, or you're spending too much money. And you can hover on an indicator to tell you what's happening. So that's a common report you want as well. And these automatic health indicators will let you know if a project is having problems while it's in progress, so that you can still do something about it. And this first indicator here is the indicator controlled by your project managers. to set overall what they think the project status is as well. So all of that is covered in some other detailed training sessions, but that's also a report with those indicators is a report that is, at least as project managers and often your executives and managers will want to run and see, what the overall health of the project is. All right, so that brings us to the end of our agenda items today. So I'm going to hand it back over to Denise for a few closing slides. Denise.
Thank you, Angie. All right, so for those of you on social media, I'd like to invite you to follow, like, and subscribe to all our social media channels. Our handle on Twitter is @ProjectInsight. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you're not already a Project Insight user and would like to learn more, please feel free to reach us via phone, email, or request your demo at projectinsight.net. In our Project Insight community, you'll find many recorded videos and webinars for you to watch and learn from. You can sign up for your next product training, project management training, or IT methodology training. So that is all we have for you today. We'd like to thank Angie for a great session, and of course, we'd like to thank our audience for your time, and we do hope to have you on board next time. Thank you so much, and have a great day.